another aspect that I would like to mention, that during all of this, as you go through all of this, it's perfectly fine that in fact, you should encourage everyone who works on the project, and I'm talking about like development team, that they begin to experiment with the code at any given time, as early as like before, like when you're just like 30% done with this stage of use case analysis. You can already start prototyping. You can start experimenting with user interface, with the database, right? By the way, big elephant in the room here, which we should also mention, that of course when we talk about objects, attributes, and use cases, remember we also talk about the database entities, simply the structure of records or persistent information that you want to capture in your database. So that's another part of what you want to discover, right? So anyway, so these are the highlights of like what happens during this active design stage, right? So we want to separate design, implementation, but at the same time, the process is highly iterative. And this is the challenge in our semester project, because I think what comes as challenging here, if I look at our semester project description right here, all right, when I look at this business requirements, and now I need to do the analysis, and I need to come up with a set of use cases, okay, the set of use cases, and by the way, next week, I am going to show you the format, the form, which you will have to fill in, every one of you, even if you're working as teams, to provide use case analysis of this specific problem, this elevator movement simulator, okay? So so this is not like, this is all we're gonna say about this. I'm just trying to basically put you in the mood for thinking about all of this, all of these aspects as you read this documentation, this business requirement document, right? But there will be a very formal approach to what we're going to do, and again, we're going to focus on it fully next week. But I think, like I said, what I find somewhat challenging in this specific, business problem to solve is that it kind of lengthy, right? So it's not like half-page description. All of a sudden it goes through discussion of all kinds of stuff, right? And even like shows you some of the potential, graphical display of elevator movements over time. How do you do this? What do you do with this? How much time you're going to need with all of this, right? So time estimation is another challenge, and of course that's why I say experimentation is absolutely paramount to give you confidence. Oh, I should be able to do this in 2 weeks, or in 3 days, and things like that, right? Of course, unanticipated things may show up, and things will be delayed, but nevertheless. So again, what you need to do as of now, basically, right? I'm not assigning you any of very specific homeworks right now, but you need to realize that you should already kind of become comfortable with an idea that you're going to have some user interface, potentially made up of multiple windows, because we say let's have a graphical user interface, unless you declare to me that the only programming language you know is C, and the only user interface is like console window, and but then I think it's even more challenging to solve this problem in the console window. It can be done, but it's more challenging. It's actually easier to employ a graphical user interface in this problem, right? But I want you to essentially, once again, I would like to go to at least one of these, views that I had over here. So you need to very clearly read it multiple times over time. And of course, if you already have a teammate, talk with your teammates about the following. Like, for instance, what objects should you have, right? Objects, such as an elevator, building visitor, right? I think an interesting part of this system is, like, for instance, actors, right? So the actors, and like this is a list of objects that you want to discover. The actors here, I'm thinking like, overall simulation, right? Simulation, we can have different actors, I guess, depending on the type of simulation sometimes. So we can have researchers, right? Researchers. We can have emergency training personnel, right? Emergency training staff, right? We can have simply like I don't know, maintenance personnel could essentially, like, basically run some simulation. The simulation could display how much over some period of time, and we can kind of express, fast forward, that kind of thing, and we can find out that we're going to have like 5 days of maintenance. How much people do you need for five days of maintenance over a certain period of time? How much people, what kind of equipment, what kind of parts you need, what kind of safety checks, inspections, and things like that, right? So another part of it could be inspections, right? I don't know, building inspector could use your system for whatever reason, right? They themselves can think of things that they want to stress out, and so therefore simulation kind of gives you, overall, it will be you sitting in front of the screen, of course, but as you think about the system design and the future of it and how good it should be, you need to think as broadly as possible sometimes, and just basically think like, what are the possibilities, right? So it's some serious business, like running building elevators. There's ton of responsibility, and besides, the technical challenges, the algorithms, the interaction between all parts, right? So you want to discover objects, you want to discover actors, right? You should also realize that there are basically another aspect to look at is that essentially there are two types of usage, right? Usage, which is kind of interesting word in software, right? So usage. Usage is system configuration. In other words, I'm thinking about like administration, right? Administration of the system, of the system, which is like configuration, I don't know, maybe some aspects of tuning up, I don't know, like anything that goes before all these regular users can get on. So there may be some administrator that will have some privileges and perhaps even allow to create certain users that may be eligible to get in and do things, all right? Like, then you want scenario management, right? You want scenario management because the simulation doesn't start before you describe the parameters. Like, how many visitors, how busy they're going to be, how long they're going to stay on a certain floor, how aggressive they're going to be, standing in line. Or sometimes you can even say that, well, you know what, if the line is longer than five people in front of me, then I may choose to use the stairs if I'm, say, on floor 4 or less, whatever, right? So first we need to describe all of these possibilities, like scenario management. Essentially create scenario, edit scenario, save scenario, all of these, and you decide what parameters go into the scenario. By the way, scenario, of course, scenario is something that you can, I apologize for my writing here, it's just this pad is so unusual to write on. Scenario, right? Scenario is something that can probably persist, right? Something that your users would want to save in a file, or maybe if in something more sophisticated than the file system. But I think we can just stick with the file system to perhaps at some point I will demonstrate what you can do with files and what you can do with object serialization, which would be an interesting thing to explore. And finally, the third type of usage would be running the scenario, right? So the actual simulation right here, right? So finally, the simulation can happen. By the way, you can also have different types of users assign different types of privileges. For instance, only maybe you want certain users to be able to create the scenario, and the maintenance, for instance, would be allowed only to run the simulation and not really make a lot of changes in the system. So some of these scenarios are pre-configured, and certain users can do that, right? So just to make it more interesting for you to think about what types of actors and how they could be using the system. Of course, in every bubble, in these areas, and this is something I came up with like in like 5 minutes. This is not something I'm not even looking at the actual description of the problem. I'm just telling you that this is the type of thinking that you need to have when approaching this description, right? So you need to keep first of all, on one side, you need to stay open-minded and realistic at the same time, but then again, to make it kind of interesting that you really don't want to design like really a one-sided and boring system which wouldn't interest anyone. Just make it kind of attractive, make it a good challenge, a good a good view of everything, and so forth. So that's the idea, right? So you need to be looking at these aspects. I may think about some other things after the break. So let's take a break. It's time for us to move to a different room. Thank you.